Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's video is over linear measures, more focused on the distance and midpoint. To get started, I want to go through a couple key features about segments and linear concepts that are going to be very helpful or important as we move forward in the semester. So the first thing is making sure you're labeling things correctly, especially when you're talking about measurements. So in this picture, I've got the segment RT. If I'm actually talking about the segment itself, whether it's about its location or its size and shape, then when we label this or when we name it, we would use those symbols we talked about in the last section. So the segment symbol and then the two capital letters, R and T. If I'm actually talking about the length of the segment, so maybe I said that the length of RT was 4 centimeters, then I do not use the symbol above. So RT equals 4 would be referring to the length. Segment is talking about the actual segment itself, whereas without the segment symbol is talking about the measurement. So that's very important. If you're gonna, later when we get into proofs, it'll be important to be able to switch back and forth between those in order to go through your steps. The other thing is the equal versus congruent concept. Equal versus congruent is going to be important when we're talking about proofs and when we're talking about measurements or congruency in general with transformations. Equal just refers to the length of the measurement. 4 centimeters is equal to 4 centimeters. 10 inches is not the same as 3 inches. Okay, so that's when we're talking about equal. Congruent refers to their size and shape. And where this could be important is if I give you two shapes, for example, a rectangle here and a rectangle here. So notice I could give these measurements. Maybe this is 3 and this is 2 and this is 2 and this is 7. Notice that these have equal side lengths, 2 and 2, but they are not congruent because they're not the same size and shape. So we're talking about as a whole when they're congruent, and when we're talking about the equal part, we're talking about do their measurements match. It's important to know the difference, like I said, because we're going to use those concepts as we go throughout the semester and through the year. Now, when we're talking about measures of a segment, there's going to be some things you want to be able to do, and the first is to label or draw pictures. Pictures will always help. This says find AB if point B is between A and C. The key here is it says B is between points A and C. Between just means somewhere along the line. It does not have to necessarily mean smack dab in the middle. It could, but it doesn't have to be. So I'm going to label my picture. Here's point A, here's point C, and then point B is just somewhere between them. I'll put it there. And if it says find AB, or because there's no symbol, find the measure of AB, if I tell you that the whole length here is 12, and I tell you that from B to C is 3, then to find AB's length, I'll color over that, all you have to do is subtract the whole segment minus the small segment gets us this. So 12 minus 3, which gets you 9, so the length of AB is 9, and you're done. So that's just some simple subtraction, but labeling your picture is really important. Now we can take this one step further. It says find the value of A and XY if Y is between X and Z. So I've gone ahead and labeled the picture already for you, but make sure you know also how to draw the picture yourself. And we've got these things labeled, points X, Y, and Z. So now we just have to set up an equation. Now the key here is knowing that you can add smaller segments to equal the larger segment. So XY and YZ together would get you all of segment XZ. So XY plus YZ will equal XZ. Okay? So to set up the equation, I'm just going to replace what I know. I know XY they said was 3A, YZ was 14 in the equation, or in the picture, and then XZ they said was 5A minus 4. And now this just goes back to algebra. We're going to go ahead and solve for A. I'm going to subtract 3A to the other side, and that's going to get us 14 equals 2A minus 4. Then I'm going to add 4 to the other side, and that's going to give us 18 equals 2A. And then lastly, divide by 2, we're going to get A is equal to 9. Now, one thing I'll really emphasize is making sure you read all the directions. So here they said find the value of A, so we just did that. so that's good. But that also wanted you to find the length of xy. And all you have to do there is take the value for a and plug it back in. They said xy was 3a, and so that means that xy's value is 3 times 9, or 27, and then you'd be done. Okay, so this one had 2 parts to it. Just make sure you read the entire directions in order to make sure you found everything you need before you move on to the next. Distance is going to be a little bit more complicated because there's multiple approaches to distance. If I'm referring to distance, what I mean is the space or the length between one point to another. Okay, and there's multiple ways you can find the distance or the length of something. The most basic way when you first started learning about distance was on a number line. For example, if I label all of these 0, maybe this goes all the way to 7, and then this goes, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so -6. And if I ask you to find the length or the distance from point X to point Y, all you'd have to do is count, and then there would be your distance. Okay, so that one, you're just counting, that's it. If you are not given points on a line, then you can either use the distance formula or Pythagorean theorem, and the choice is pretty much up to you. Distance formula is usually going to be easier because you don't have to worry about graphing or having a graph, but it's really going to get you the same answer no matter what. So on this example here, I'm going to show you both methods, and then from there, you just want to make sure you know how to do both. It says that you have the point -4, -6, and you also have the point 5, -1, and I want to find the distance between those. So to do this, if you're going to do the graphing method with Pythagorean theorem, you want to go ahead and plot those points. So -4, -6, so there's point C, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, so there's point D, and I wanted to find the length between the two. Okay, so if I'm going to find the length between the two, you're basically going to be making a right triangle. So to do that, I'm going to start at one point, and I'm going to go over, and I'm just doing this dotted because it's not technically there. Okay, I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to go up, and by doing that, I'm creating a right triangle. And all I have to do is count from C to this corner. So if I count over, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's a distance of 9. And then from this point up, we're going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now you're finding the hypotenuse. If you remember back from when you learned Pythagorean theorem, c squared equals a squared plus b squared. And I just plug in the leg values. And that would give me 9 squared plus 5 squared. C squared is equal to 81 plus 25. You could add those together. You get 106. And then take the square root of both sides. And so you'd get C is equal to the square root of 106. And then if it asks for a decimal answer, just type that in and you'd be done. Obviously, that requires a picture. If you don't have one, I wouldn't suggest this method, but you could use the distance formula. So D is equal to the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, and then take the square root of all that. It's going to get you the same exact answer. It's just a different method. Okay, they are related to each other. Here's x1 and y1. Here's x2 and y2. And all I'd have to do is plug those things in. So 5 minus -4 squared plus -1 minus -6 squared. Go ahead and simplify everything underneath. So 5 minus -4, two negatives make a positive. So that's going to get us 9 squared. And then -1 minus -6, that's like adding a positive 6. So that's going to get us -5 squared. And then when we go ahead and simplify those, we get 9 squared is 81. And -5 squared is positive 25. And add those, you get 106 again. So notice, same answer, same process. It's just whether or not you need a picture or you just go ahead and plug into the formula. Okay? And I think that's it for this first video about distance and length. If you have any questions on any of the examples, let me know. But in the next video, we're going to talk about midpoint.